I'm 29 now and I barely found my footing. My interest in activism, again, that came from the environment I grew up in. I grew up knocking on people's doors and missing school as early as in kindergarten to help with my mother because she always had to travel out of town to help with other people's statuses. And I know a lot of you mentioned today that you like cartoons and comics. I actually studied animation originally while I was studying my undergraduate degree, which you can tell from the style of illustration. But I was still lost afterwards because at that time, culture didn't equal money in the industry, and this wasn't too long ago. So in 2015, I decided to go back into school. I started studying for my master's in fine arts in communication design, you know, to kill time and just to figure out what is it I really want to do and give myself an opportunity to really explore what art I want. I already had this strong interest in activism. So money was never exactly my main focus, even though there's always bills to be paid, especially as an adult. I started to put myself out there slowly through public in protest with posters I illustrated, as you can see here, and just putting my work on display in social media. From there, people surprisingly started to take notice and they invited me to join their causes, which slowly led me to build a network and a sense of community, not only online, but in the real world. So through social media, I used that opportunity of connecting with other nonprofits and volunteering such as Jolt, LULAC, and Raices here in Austin to listen, to learn, and to engage with other community members. With trust built over time, I was given the opportunities to have this creative outlet to keep on producing work and challenging myself as a creative to take lead in artistic direction with community engagement projects that would capture the media's attention. And honestly, it all started with Instagram. You would be surprised by all the opportunities that are out there if you just decide to take, you know, a simple chance on yourself and put your work out there in the public eye. There's a world out there hungry for human connection and to be seen, and that's what my art reflects. Culture back then used to be seen as such a niche or something political, but now as time went on and progressed, I started noticing people taking it upon themselves to fill that void. That's how movements are made. Mass media presently likes to take the dominant narrative. It likes to describe immigrants as a threat to the nation. And these narratives often silence those communities that are underrepresented or portray a perspective based on fear and misunderstanding. So one of the things I like to ask myself is like, how do we turn that around, that perspective? How do we change those negative perceptions of communities facing injustices? That's where artists come in, and they continue to go and document that history for themselves and motivate others to see themselves in a positive light rather than what the media tries to portray. So around September 5th in 2017, if you guys are familiar with DACA, that's the paperwork that allows children or young adults who came here as a child to live here and go to school and work legally. It was about to expire, and that final decision for Dreamers was going to be made around March 2018 because they're always continuously in limbo. In reaction to the news, I was still exploring my art and exploring what type of voice I want to portray and show the world. And that's when I took it upon myself to draw again what I knew. I drew an Afro-Latina with monarch butterflies in her hair and the message, "My dreams are not illegal." This started to cause an online buzz. And then eventually the Women's March took notice of it and my art just started spreading everywhere. It opened up a whole new discussion about what immigrants look like. To me, I see a woman with a dark complexion who happens to be Black and Latina. Others are confused by it. Aren't illegal immigrants all Mexican? Why does everything need to be Black? It provoked this question in person and online. What is it that diversity actually looks like within the immigrant community? Questioning the faces we neglect and what the media chooses to focus on. Her image created a space for positive representation for those who did not feel like they had an identity to connect with, and continues to do so years later. So in reaction to the news, I like to use creative thinking within my work and teach other people how to think. So with JOLT, a local organization here that works in civic engagement in Austin, we wanted to find a way to inspire our community by letting volunteers come up with their own creative action to lead. So using that graphic designer part of my brain, I decided I'm going to create this 20-piece card game that's going to help us focus on asking the right questions and to find a sense of direction. Who's our audience? What's our message? And what's our purpose? With that, I accompanied it with this journey map, which is basically a set of Post-it notes on a wall where we write our ideas down based on each question to force us to communicate out loud and organize ourselves visually, because a lot of people like to think art is just for themselves and self-expression, but you can create it for a community. Thus, with a team of acquaintances, I met these people from different backgrounds. One was an architect, one was a painter, another a designer, audio engineer, writing, analytics, everything you can think of. So we decided to invite the community to come out together and create a sculpture inspired by that image you saw earlier of the Afro-Latina, and create a campaign to celebrate the fight rather than mourn that possible expiration date. So with her image still in our mind, we worked together and we built this community interactive art installation of a monarch butterfly with wings made of wood and a steel bar frame, 7 feet tall by 7 feet wide. If you're not familiar, the monarch butterfly is a symbol of migration. It crosses borders without hesitation or boundaries from Canada to Mexico. The purpose was to allow people to stand between her wings and to embody that message, migration is sweet, with her blowing a kiss at whoever's standing in between. Along the edges, if you pay attention, are conchas, also known as Mexican sweet bread, that outlines her wings and we put those in place in there as a message to say, you love my culture, but not me. So when that day drew closer to the supposed expiration date of DACA, we held an event at the South Steps at the Capitol, where we had dreamers stand in front of that installation to share their stories to the media, to share a moment of empowerment and pride for their identities and why their stories matter, reclaiming that narrative and changing the face of what an immigrant looks like to the public. This is just one example of what creative art and protest and campaign can look like. I do have a second example to show y'all. So this next project was in collaboration with Raices and my friend Yocelyn Riojas here, who's standing beside me in this photo. And this was for the #AbolishIcebox campaign that we held last year during South by. The intention was to display the diversity of the immigrant community and bring attention to the issue again by recreating a hielera, or what is also known in English as an icebox. And with this icebox, we created it to represent an ofrenda, which is an altar in remembrance for those who have passed or are struggling. Every migrant held in hieleras, and that means many of all those migrants who cross the border speak out against these inhumane conditions. And what they usually tend to say is that it's an intensely cold room. There's little to no natural lighting, and you have to sleep on a concrete floor often with just an emergency blanket. The food is poor, people tend to get sick, conditions are cramped, and you have to wait for hours, even days, before being transferred into another detention center. The hielera can get as cold as -10 degrees. As you walk into this little room, the hielera installation, you would find yourself in a room with these invisible faces of these little sculptures the size of children with lights and flowers within their bodies as a symbolism of hope. The door would close behind you, and in silence, you're left to watch this projector playing just the audio story of this young girl that nobody knows, just recounting her experience of how she crossed the border and ended up in the detention center. So outside that icebox, we painted a community mural, and it featured just an array of people, of immigrants, and surrounded that by a chain link fence with the question, what does immigration mean to you? The fence was a symbol of the barriers within our immigration system that imposes that internationally recognized right. Those bandanas were tied onto the fence with messages written by the public on our country's approach to immigration. Not all of them were good and not all of them were bad. The fence was placed in front of this mural as a metaphor to represent that border wall, keeping the audience away from the American dream. So recently, this past fall, I had an artist residency at Mexiacta Museum in South Austin on Congress. Me and my friend Jerry, the artist I collaborated with, were invited to work at this artist residency program in collaboration again with Raices to bring back the icebox as an altar within the museum. But this time, that video that was projected onto the screen, I took this as an opportunity to produce a short animated film, and with bilingual subtitles this time, so that way children have the opportunity to connect to this story. So let me share my screen so we can watch that. Okay, can everybody see the video? All right, great.
Estábamos en un lugar donde plantaban árboles de fruta, como de naranja. Estábamos debajo de uno de ellos cuando empezamos a ver luces y un hombre dijo que nos quedáramos quietos, pero después pasó un poco de tiempo cuando uno de los que venían con nosotros dijeron que unos hombres se venían acercando con sus linternas y dijo que corriéramos. Él gritó que corriéramos y todos salimos corriendo. Yo salí primero, después salió mi hermano, mi tía. Ellos salieron después de mí, yo salí corriendo aparte y mi prima también. Y pues corrí no tanto, pero cuando ya miré que iba muy cerca del oficial, venía con un perro. Cuando ellos venían demasiado cerca, yo me tuve que parar y me subí arriba de un palo. El palo, las hojas estaban muy bajas y el policía no se podía meter. Entonces solo el perrito se metió y me estaba ladrando. Y el oficial me dijo que me bajara. Yo me bajé, el perro se salió y después me tomó de la mano y me puso las esposas y me dijo que íbamos a correr y me agarró del brazo y comenzamos a correr. Ya después él paró y el perro se le fue dado a otro policía y él se lo llevó y a mí me sentaron al lado de mi tía y me esposaron a las dos, me quitó la esposa de la mano izquierda para ponerme la derecha con mi tía también. Me sentí asustada y como dijeron que eran los policías y dijeron que si mirábamos a alguien teníamos que correr antes de que iniciáramos, entonces tuve que correr. Pero cuando corrí estaba sola ya, los otros fueron por otros lados, el lugar era grande. Estuvimos ahí por un ratito, después apareció mi prima y le esposaron a ella también y nos hicieron como una cadena con nosotros tres y nos llevaron. Mi hermano, a él no le esposaron, pero después de ahí nos fueron a sentar ahí y llevaron a otras personas y ahí estábamos sentados esperando que nos vinieran a recoger para llevarnos a la hielera. Llegó el oficial y nos dijo que nos iba a revisar. Nos revisó y nos quitó nuestras cosas, que si traíamos algo como un teléfono o cosas así que le entregáramos y los echamos en unas bolsas. Eran mis cosas favoritas y yo nunca me las quitaba, yo siempre las caminaba. Mi abuela me regaló mis anillos y mis cadenas y mi pulsera me la dio mi mamá, me la compró en mi país. Nos llevaron a cuartos y me separaron de mi hermano y solo estaba yo, mi tía y mi prima. nos metieron en un cuarto donde no había espacio. Nosotros a veces teníamos que estar paradas para que otras personas se acostaran. Yo no me acostaba, no podía dormir. El lugar era muy estrecho y era muy helado. El suelo no nos daba nada para acostarnos, estaba muy helado. Me daba como escalofríos, náuseas. No comía muy seguido y me sentía mal del estómago. Estaba aburrida, deprimida. No me sentía bien. No me gustaba que nunca estuve encerrada así. Y por mi primera vez estaba demasiado frío y ya me enfermaba. Me enfermo con el frío. Yo no puedo sentir ningún olor cuando está demasiado frío. Me duele la cabeza. Mi estómago sentía muy pequeño que hacía ruido. Se sentía mal, me sentía con náuseas y una vez que ya no aguanté, casi estaba durmiendo demasiado, me enrollaba y mi prima, mi tía, tocaron la ventana, la estaban golpeando porque necesitaba ir con la enfermería. Había una allí pequeñita, solo era como para una persona nada más. Y yo tenía demasiada hambre, pero ellos solo me dieron una galleta. Me estaba como acostumbrando, ya estaba muy aburrido. Ya me estaba acostumbrando a no mirar a mi hermano ni a mi prima. A ellos los tenía en otros lugares.
There we go. Everybody can see the screen again? Okay, let's continue on. Let's give it a minute. There you go. So the characters you saw in that animation, they were alebrijes, which are these little creatures in Mexican folklore, which we use to represent the different qualities of the people you saw in that story. Most importantly, the jaguar, who has the power to travel through darkness and light. It's funny because we might not speak about immigration directly to children, but when we played it at the museum, they were very highly aware of what was going on in the world, and it gave them the space to join that conversation. They had questions and their personal views to share with one another. And through that work, though it's bright and colorful, it still holds this place of truth that tries to keep putting, the facts of the situations at the forefront. And with this girl's story, people got to hear it directly from somebody who had that experience, which is sadly not uncommon. The gallery space grew into this room. It was a collection of bandanas hanging on a fence and the wall that represent the working class, which for myself brings up memories of my family, that they grew up working in the fields, wiping their sweat off their bandanas. And each of these bandanas were handwritten by different people that attended this event. And each shares a story or a message about what immigration means to them. In this bandana, it says, "To my unborn child, sorry you will be born into a world so full of hate, your papa." Art has the capability to expose and to help those voices and to help voice issues of social justice. As a cultural tool, art helps humanize and portray the emotions, grievances, and fears of those who may not have another place to share those concerns. Using cultural resistance as a tool in the arts or design can create shock and inspire us to action. Art does not solve problems, but it does make us aware of their existence. So I hope with today's talk, you learn to educate yourself as much as possible about the good social practices and the social justice issues you're most passionate about. If you want to create work within the community, discover projects or campaigns that inspire you and study them, and think critically about what's the unifying message they're trying to tell. Above all, cultivate that unfailing compassion for others and hope for a brighter future that fuels your desire to keep helping them. Just remember to pause every once in a while and ensure the art you're creating and that impact really reflects on those stories being told and lives up to all your good intentions in amplifying those voices of others. So I hope you all have been inspired, and I hope you guys come back so we can answer some more questions later after this talk. But the message on this image is mi lucha es tu lucha, which is your struggle is my struggle. Thank you. Here you guys go. Here's my information.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, we have a few minutes, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
And I was curious, maybe I'll go first.
Yeah.
If you had, especially for people who are looking to maybe share their work on social media, and especially now that social media is such a place of conversation about issues of justice and different community issues. Like, if you have any advice for people who are hoping to share their work on social media and how to start that.
Oh yeah, I found my career started on Instagram, surprisingly. Like, I already had an interest. I was already volunteering at different organizations and nonprofits, but like I said earlier, I was in school. I didn't know where my art could take me or what I wanted to even create with it because I didn't have that space of support or motivation. So through Instagram, I decided to just start looking up hashtags, or I started researching, you know, what even exists, especially within the movements that you may be interested in. You'd be surprised at how little there is out there of images or art that reflects the message of these campaigns that they're trying to share in those stories. So doing so, research hashtags, research the organizations you want to work with, share them, tag them, and I would just say do the research of what art you're creating and make sure it's sensitive to the subject and has an uplifting message, because cancel culture is real, so be careful with that.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions? Otherwise, I'll share the link again to sign up for a mentorship session if you want to have a more direct conversation. I guess one last question I have too, if no one else has any questions, is you've translated your work to so many different mediums. Like, how is that process of, especially for students who might start out just drawing, bringing it to sculpture and public art installations and video? Like, how is that for you?
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't be afraid. I started out just drawing in my sketchbook, and then I taught myself how to paint digitally and translate that. And then eventually people saw that imagery and they just kind of gave me opportunities. It's like, do you want to experiment with felt? Do you want to experiment with sculpture? And a lot of the times it's not just me working alone. So I work with other people who work in different mediums, and I learn from them, and I just take chances and I research and I test out different ways just to translate those messages. So that's essentially it. It's just take a risk. If you have a vision and you think you can make it happen, test it out, experiment, and find places where people will give you that opportunity to share. And all it takes is to ask.
That's a good lesson for everyone. I guess if we don't have any questions, we might transition on to our next speaker, but we are so excited to have you come back and participate in breakout sessions if people can talk to you more directly. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Your work is so inspiring. And yeah, I highly encourage anyone who doesn't already follow Yocelyn to go ahead and do so. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me, and I'll see you guys later in the breakout sessions.
So my name is Faustinus Joseph Maria Hendrik Deraet van Regen Morter, but to make it easier, I will just go by Faustinus. It's kind of interesting because my name is basically, it has the word Austin, so I will be an F as the diaphragm of the camera, then Austin, and then US, or Faust in us. So let me go, let me see what is the next thing that I can go down on this. Go back. No, it's making click. Okay, did it change? Yes, is everybody? So I was born in Belgium. This is the Belgian flag. And I was born in this little town called Antwerp. If I move my arrow, I don't know. Da-da-da-da. Okay, let me just go. And then, okay, and then I grew up in Mexico City. So basically I speak Flemish and I speak Spanish. So when I was a little kid, I moved to Mexico, and a lot of my work, it has something to do with Mexico, and a lot of it has to do with traveling. I used to work for IBM. At IBM, it was International Business Machine. I used to be a sales executive. What does that mean? That I was wearing a suit every single day. So during 6 years or 7 years, I decided to change my life, and I decided to study photography, and I basically became a photographer. I am married. I have a lovely wife, and I have also a really nice daughter. So that is based as part of my family. I really enjoy traveling. I think that most of my images are always taken overseas on some other places, but normally I try to take my photos every time that I'm on vacation. What else? Let me see, what was the next one? Oh, here we go. I really enjoy writing. I think it's very important to write about your photography, about your life, about things by itself. And on the other hand, I think that every time that you see a photo, it has something to do with your life. You can see here again the Gesed van Antwerpen. That is the place that I was born, and I like to write. What else about me? Okay, let me put a little stop right there, and let me go back. I don't know how can I go back. Stop sharing my screen. So this is my first artistic photo that it helped me to pay part of my scholarship at the school where I was studying photography. And then this is the one that was the first photo that it got published. I always think that there is a kind of an attachment to your first photo and to the last photo. So always try to keep your last photos and go back to see your work as photographer. So this was my first photo. It was published. I was really happy. I was really proud. And I don't know why it makes click instead of changing. So the main camera that I used to work with is called a Holga. This is a Holga. This is film, and I need to use some tape. Let me tell you how lucky you are right now in order to take a photo. Because before, let me say, this is part of the instructions. So basically, every single camera that I used when I was your age and slightly older, it says here you have to load your film. You have all those instructions. And then at the end, once that your film is loaded, you have another instruction about how to take a photo. So basically, you have to make a click. You have to advance, you make another click. You have to advance, you make another click. And then finally, you got your film. But wait, you have to develop your film. So once that you develop, oh, by the way, this is the whole guy. So that is the part that you put the film inside of it. Then I had to tape my whole camera because it will get some light leaks. And then this is what I will get. So you will get a negative. Based on that negative, this is basically what you will see. And then you have to do a positive. It means that you have to do a print. So this will be your print. And then you have to choose something to print again. So basically that was the way that photography works. So you have your camera, you have to develop, and then you have to do some printings. Nowadays, it's a totally different story. But sometimes with my negative, it didn't work at all. So this is what I will get, and it will be the other part. So shooting with that plastic toy camera was a kind of a tricky thing, not as easy. And this will be another one, kind of an example. Let me go back. So this is basically like my part of my art photography. I know that we're going to talk later about that. And so going back to the commercial photography. There are things that are really kind of cool to do. Some of those are not as cool to do, but like in this case, it's an event. We have a lot of photographers taking photos at an event. I choose this photo with several photos because while doing the event, I had to do also some headshots. So I had to take headshots of everybody, and then I have to take a group shot. And the interesting thing, I just got a flashback. In this photo, there is this guy with little squares. When we got to the event, they asked me that I was not allowed to take photos of this guy. So every time that I was trying to make a click, I was asking him to go and move And then at the end, he was on the whole thing about having the group photo, and I had to put some squares on it because he was not even allowed to be seen. Commercial photography, again, headshots. I really enjoy taking photos of people. And then you can be a bit more creative. Okay. Any questions so far? We still have like 10 minutes to go. This is everything about commercial photography. Then you have a kind of a deeper commercial photography. I think this is my most famous photo. It was printed, I think it's also my biggest photo. It was done on the, I don't remember exactly what it was done, but it was on the police headquarters. So maybe once you were driving around there and you saw that photo, that was mine. What else? Here we go. So what else do? I take a lot of photos of interiors, like architectural photography. Some of those are kind of boring, some of them more interesting, but it's also part of the commercial photography. Product photography. I put this image that is totally boring, but it's at the same time, it's really hard to take photos when they ask you to have a photo with a white background and white details. It's extremely hard. So it looks very easy, but believe me, to have a white photo with a white background, it's not as easy. What else? Here we go. Events. I worked a lot with a company called Univision, or you say Univision. So I've been able to take the photos of a lot of the Mexican events, like going to Las Luchas, the Grito in Mexico, some concerts, and part of the behind the scenes. This is Gloria Trevi. I didn't know exactly what kind of photos to choose, but I think that it will give you kind of an idea about what is the part of the commercial photography that you can do. And then I'm going to the more kind of my personal photography. We can take photos of anything that we want. And when my daughter, she was born, they asked me, do you have any photos of your daughter? And I say, no, I don't have any photos. So I decide to start to do a body of work called Abandoning Anya. So basically, I took my daughter, I put it in silly places, and I would take a photo. So this is one of the first one that I took. Then I took another one. So this is again the place that I was born. This is Belgium, Antwerp, my daughter. And I did, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, 75 photos of my daughter. So I strongly recommend to create a body of work of the images that you want to take. So this is Abandoning Anya. Then Anya, she starts to get older. And then I continue taking photos of her. That was that age that I don't want to have my photo taken. I don't want to be seen on the photos. So basically I put it in interesting places and I always shoot her from the back. And she was most of the time carrying this little doll right there. Her name was Coco. And then I took a lot of photos of Coco with Anya. The kind of the cool thing about this photo is that if you can see Anya's dress and you can see that Coco, she's wearing exactly the same dress as Anya. So again, I did a whole series about Abandoning Anya. And then it was Observing Anya. The more personal that you can make your photo with your art photography, I think is when people, they start to get more a kind of an attraction to your photography. Let me go back. And are we still awake? Yes? No questions? Are we doing good? Here we go. This is one that I like to share a lot because this is like behind the scenes when I was taking those photos of Observing Anya. Believe me, every time that I grab my camera, something weird will happen. So like in this case, you even have like people walking towards you, just trying to cover your lens. Or people, they will be walking around trying to find out what you're taking photos about. Or funny things will happen. So I did another series of behind the scenes of Observing Anya. Then you can take photos of everything that you want. When I became 50 years old, I decided to do a body of work of images about number 1 to number 50. So you can have any kind of excuse of anything that you want to take photos about. And remember that nowadays you can make a click and you don't have to develop, you don't have to do basically anything to get a photo, just to get a kind of an eye. How do I select my work? It seems like nowadays a lot of people, they don't do any printing. In my case, I do a lot of printing. And the way that I try to expose my work is basically through galleries. You need to think and you need to go back that during, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 years ago, the only way that I was able to show my images was going through galleries. Instagram didn't exist. Facebook didn't exist. Internet was not as friendly as it is now. So this is one of the ways that I try to go and promote my work. I go to galleries, I do little books and things like that. So instead of looking through all my images in my camera, I will do prints. I will use my wall. I will put all my images. I will start to see them how they look big. And based on that, I will do a selection. All these little ones that you have right there, every single page has how many? 16 images. From those 16 images, at the end, I will have, I don't know, maybe 250. I will choose my favorites. And based on my favorites, then what I would do is to do a selection of those. Based on this idea, I decide to change a little my body of work. And what I'm doing now is that I take photos of my photos. So basically what you will see here, it's a photo of a photo. And when it's framed, it seems or it looks like it's a real thing there instead of like having like a photo. Any questions so far? Are we still doing good? So this is part of my wall, part of my favorite photos, the way that I would just go and choose my photos. I'm going back again to every time that you see this kind of images, those were the ones taken with my Holga, with my plastic toy camera. And I think that every single photo that we see and that we take, it has a lot to do with our own personality. I've been honored enough to review some portfolios from some young students, and it's amazing the information that you can see. So I really strongly recommend you that every time that you take a photo, try to understand why you took that photo, and you will find a lot of things about yourself. So I think that philosophically speaking, every time that I take a photo, I see myself in that photo. In this case, it's kind of obvious. I think as a photographer, there is a camera, and you can see it right that is part of, I try to put myself in that body, and you have a reflection of my own face. And the other thing is that nowadays we all are photographers. Even a horse is a photographer. So the art of photography, if I go back during the days that I was developing, nowadays is a totally different story. So you have to be very creative and trying to find other way of looking at images instead of the way that you are used to. In this case, for example, this is a horse, but this camera is like a 4x5, 5x7. It's a kind of a really difficult camera to take photos with. And every time that I give a talk, I try to start with this photo about we all are photographers, but it's not so easy to take photos. This is one of my, going back to the first photo and the last photo that you have taken. This is one of my favorites, kind of recent photo, maybe was taken about a year ago. And it has a lot to do with traveling, with reflection, and with patience. And then again, if you want to become a photographer, remember you can choose different ways. And the road to be a photographer is not as easy as it was before. Now it's totally different. And this is one of also my favorite images. As I was telling you, every single photo you portray yourself. So you can see right there, that is me taking a photo of that old car. I just got a flashback that when I was taking this photo, suddenly some guys start to scream, "Hey, you are taking photos." So it seems like a lot of people, they will go to that place and they will steal some of those parts of the cars. And I think that we still have like 5 minutes. And I think that that's it basically from my talk. Do we have any questions so far? Let me see. Oh, going back, I just remembered this about my last photo that it was exposed to the internet or whatever. This is the one. It's J Balvin. I don't know if you know that guy or not, but it was published on Univision. And then this is the photo. This is basically my last photo yesterday when I was taking some photos of of architecture, I decided to meet the owner, and I took a photo of him. So basically, that's it.
Hey folks, excuse me. My name is Jennifer Balkan, and I am one of the founders of Atelier Dojo, which is Austin's newest academy for realist art. And so, yeah, we love teaching. In a sense, I like to describe representational art in its most basic, fundamental way is basically making a thing look like a thing. And so we, with that, we focus a lot on figurative work and figurative art. Work that includes people, drawing people, painting people, not yet sculpture, hopefully at some point, portraits, and so we do a lot of that. And so today I thought I would do something kind of fun. I'm predominantly an oil painter. That's my main medium. I also draw, and I recently started getting really into Posca pens, which are, for those of you who don't know what those are, they are acrylic paint markers. So they're essentially like glorified magic markers, but they behave, because they're water-based and they behave like acrylic paint, so you can layer them in pretty neat ways. And so I thought I would share a demo doing that. But fundamentally, hey, Grace, I don't know how, I just wanted to check in. Do I enable people to comment or question while I'm talking, or is it just—
Yeah. What
Okay.
we've kind of been doing is asking people to go on mute while you're talking, but having people answer in the chat. Or,
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I was doing tending to anybody who had a comment or a question about it. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So when I teach drawing and painting of people, really drawing, sketching, anything representationally, trying to make that thing look like a thing or a person look like a person. It's all about capturing light and shadow. And so, you know, that is like first and foremost on anything, regardless of like how much color you want to use. You can be as colorful as you want, but in order to really make your person look like who you want it to look like, all of your lights and shadows, what we sometimes refer to as value or tone, have to be spot on. And so I'm going to share a couple of things with you before I start my demo. So let me just get that going. Okay, I got a bunch of stuff to share. Wow, lots of stuff. All right, hang on. There's my Posca pens. There's my all right, right here. Okay, so oh yeah, and then there's my little drawing. I'll show you guys that in a second. So sorry. Okay, getting my screen up so I can see some of y'all's faces. So anyway, like this essentially is like such an important tool that we use when we're doing portraiture, or or really anything, still life, or just basically trying to get our drawing looking like what we are drawing. And so this is a scale. This is a value scale from lightest to darkest, from 1 to 10, and with that, basically it's a continuum. It could be, it could be seamless, meaning like you could divide this up into 1,000 categories, and basically you've just got this like seamless gradation from white to black, right? And so let me just show you guys one thing. So when doing that, when rendering something to make something let's see, is this what I wanted to show you? Yes, okay. So here, this is a little painting that I use when I teach, and it's super simple. Basically, I've painted a cube and a sphere under one light source. And my goal in doing this was to paint it in as few values as possible, to make it look like what it is. You know, basically a sphere or a cube or a sphere under a direct light source casting a shadow. And so that's it. Like it's kind of amazing how you can, you know, you can get something that looks really realistic with just a few values. And so I only used 3 values from this little value scale to get that. And then I ended up using 6 from here to get that. And it reads as a sphere or a cube. I'm giving you like the super sped up, this is what values are about before I get into the marker drawing. So anyway, now that I said all that, this was my medium for today. And yeah, had a lot of fun using these markers recently, or discovered them last year, and I've just been doing a lot with them. So what I did, this is my friend Renee, and who posed for me a while back. I've painted her a bunch. She's awesome. She actually makes like fantastic leather jewelry. So, and she calls herself, her hashtag or Instagram is Afro Gypsy TX. So if you want to see some really great, cool stuff made of leather, that's what she does. So anyway, I had the pleasure of drawing her today. And so what I did first, so using these kinds of markers can, you know, they're pretty forgiving. And what I mean by that is that you can like make a mistake and actually, like, if you do it fast enough, if you realize that you've put something down quickly enough, you could pull it up with some water. Now, if that doesn't happen, you can also just paint over it. Essentially they're paint. And so once it dries, you can lay some more color over it, which is nice, which is a nice feature. Now, all that said, it is nice to, when you're using something like using a medium like this, is to have a drawing first. And so what I did was I did a pencil drawing of Renee. Show you what let's see. Yeah, so got a little pencil drawing, and talking about that stuff I was saying before, values, dark, light. I'm looking at her, and I'm just really assessing the darkest, the more shadowed parts of her face, some of those darker areas in there. And, you know, some of the very darkest are like inside of her eyes and her eye sockets. And then here's the light that's hitting her. I've left her hair kind of open, you know, I know that there's going to be a lot of dark there, but decided just for this kind of initial preliminary sketch that I would just really focus on her face, because that's like the hardest part. And so what we teach at Atelier Dojo is like really spending a lot of time to get a drawing that, you know, really does resemble your sitter or your subject. And that is all about abstracting all of this complicated information into little bits of, basically just like little bits of dark and light. I did this one. I didn't take too long to do this. Had I spent more time on it, I probably would have like really paid attention to getting it as like accurate as I could. Oops. So I'll zoom out there. So I started with this sketch, and now I'll show you what I did. So there I've got it, and I was working off of my iPad, and I've sped this up a lot because I don't have a whole lot of time with you guys. So I basically sped it up so that yeah, you can see as much as possible, and we could, you know, talk through it. And I think Grace, or not, I know Grace, I sent you that image. So if anybody was wanting to draw, sketch, whatever on the image of Renee, you could do that. So one thing to say about as I'm laying in marker marks is that what's most important to me is the value. So even though I'm really excited about all the color, the value, the degree from light to dark is really, no matter what the color is, it's the value. Oh, let me get this. There we go. You can see her as I'm. It's going to be making sure the how light or how dark it is spot on to really make it look like her. So one thing I'll say that's kind of funny is that I lacked, when I was doing this, I realized, and I have it now, but it doesn't really matter. One color that I really wish that I had when I was working on Renee was this, I had a nice rich kind of medium brown here, but I really wished I had a dark brown for some of these darks and then her hair. But I didn't have that, so I had to make do. And so what I did was I ended up using a lot of purple. Like I said, getting the right darkness was way more important than getting the right color. So I thought, well, whatever. I'll make her, you know, she's gonna have some like rich purple hair, and I'm gonna use a lot of purples to get in, you know, some of those darks. So that's what I ended up doing. So what I'm doing here is I'm, you know, going along all those shadowed dark areas, the marks, the pencil marks that I had that I had drawn, and grabbing markers to lay on top. I'm cross hatching kind of like frenetically. There's very, you know, you can cross hatch in so many ways. You know, basically creating this sort of like little grid effect. Maybe I'll make this bigger. Let me see if I can make that. There we go. Okay. There. Yeah, so basically I'm layering color, and kind of, it's a real fun, like spontaneous kind of medium, because you can lay some color down and then lay more color on top of it, and create a blending effect by doing that. And so and the more you add, sort of the more volume you can create. But whatever I do, again, always like checking that my it's like light, and you know, it's the degrees of light and dark are enough. And something that I do regularly with all of my work is that I use a mirror to check the reverse image to see that it's right, that there's no obvious mistake or mismarks, which happen all the time. And so what that help, you know, by using a mirror, you're flipping your image, and when you're staring at something for so long, your brain, it's hard to see what's wrong with it until you turn it around. And some people actually like turn it upside down and do it that way. I've been yammering on for the last, 10, 15 minutes here. I'd love you guys, you know, if anybody has any questions about or comments about any of this, I'm totally open to answering while we watch, and I will continue to talk. So, but I want to see if anybody has anything to say. And if not, that's cool. You guys just happy watching? All right. Okay. That's totally cool. So here I am, just adding more paint, more marker, and trying to, you know, recreate what I see. I'm definitely using some artistic license by being liberty with color, wanting to convey the correct amount of depth, but and thinking about color temperature when I do that. And what I mean by that is how cool or warm a color is, and it's a relative term. That is, it's only as cool or as warm as it is relative to what's next to it. So something that I think about a lot when I'm painting or drawing people, is that we've got, you know, if we look at this image of Renee, let me get a little bigger here. There we go. So we've got, you know, we have our shadowed side, we have our light side, and then we have something that we call our halftone, or a transitional midtone, which is what happens when you have a round form, like a cheek or a forehead, and there's light sources over here somewhere, we can tell because this part is illuminated on her face. There's light hitting, and then as the form turns away from the light and it goes into shadow, there's this little area that of the form that is not light and it's not dark. It's somewhere in between, and it's super important to convey that in what we call like a middle value. So somewhere in between this one and in between that one. And not only that, it's also a little cooler in temperature because it's kind of cooling off as we turn the form around her forehead. So that's sort of the key to creating to creating the illusion of 3 dimension. If you want something to look 3D, you have to have at least 3 values. So with just 3 values, something suddenly, and I mean that cube that I was showing you before, I had 3 values on that cube, and therefore it read as something that looked 3-dimensional. So as I'm laying in more marks over here, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about how to ensure that her cheek over here looks like there's turning of form as we're like moving across over the cheek, and I'm adding more color, and I'm making sure I'm dark enough in spots where we need to be dark enough. Yeah, basically, you know, just checking values, staying true to what I see here. Light, the most light is up here, and as we move down the head, you know, I talk a lot about the skull and when I'm teaching this stuff, and what lies underneath the skin to make us you know, to make us read like this, to make us appear with one light source that there's a lot of light here, and then as we move down the face we have less and less, and that's because our heads taper. Like when we look at a skull, we can feel our faces, that our cheek, you know, basically our cheekbones, you know, all of us humans, we taper down, and so this little area, our jaw, will receive less light and therefore appear darker and also cooler. So I'm just basically adding more hatches, adding more color to create the illusion of this, and laying in a little bit of some background info and around her crown, and getting some of that green in. Let's see, what else can I tell you about this? Does anybody, let me ask you a question to the group, because I enjoy, I don't know, things like this sometimes being a little more interactive. Who likes to draw here? Or I should say, who likes to draw people? of the videos that I actually see. I can see you, yeah, people. I'm looking. I'll scroll over here. Oh, nope, not video. Only videos are on my first page here. Cool. Okay. And those of you who like to draw, do you also paint? Anybody paint? Paint as well? Nice. Yeah. You know, the fun thing, you know, like I said, what I mainly do is oil paint, and this kind of medium sort of lies between drawing and painting. And one thing you could do with this is that I could actually add a brush to this while I'm working if I wanted to, because it is acrylic and it behaves like that. You can lay brush in. Has anybody used these markers before? Anyone use Posca pens? Anybody use markers? Most people have used markers in their life, like a little bit. Oh, I see Andre raising their hand. Is that a raising your hand on Posca pens or markers or both? I see like a finger. It's really hard to see you. Okay. Cool. Okay. Hey, what's up? So Posca pens. You can I unmute you so I can hear? Okay. Hey there.
Yeah, I've used Posca pens for my work before.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. So you know how this medium works. Yeah.
Sort of. Once they're dry, do you have a way of still blending them? Because I find that I can only blend them when they're still wet, and they dry pretty quickly.
They really dry fast. As you can see, I use them a little differently than I think. Because I'm hatching more than actually coloring in. That's really the way I blend. You know what I mean? So yeah. So I'm not really technically blending. I'm not, you know, dragging a brush over two different little areas of paint and merging them. Like you would if you were, you know, painting in a particular style. So, I mean, I think the short answer, unfortunately, is no. Once they dry, you can't. But the cool thing about these is that you can layer, so you can sort of do it over if you need to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I'm working on watercolor paper because I'm laying a lot on there, and I would probably tear through the paper if I were to use thin paper with this kind of application.
Oh yeah, when I did it on printer paper, it did bleed through.
Yeah,
they're like liquid.
Yeah, especially like if you know, sometimes I actually want to get more pigment on, so I'll like bang it out a little bit, and then it starts dripping. So using heavier paper is really helpful. What you said for your work? What kind of work do you do?
I can just go ahead and. It's like hard to describe. I do well, not realist. I'm more into like cartoon work. This is my one I'm working on right now with a mix between acrylics and Posca. I don't know if you can see that.
Awesome. Very cool. Oh, great color. Yeah.
So I use the Poscas for the details, but the rest I do acrylic because they're pretty limited.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, I will, you know, so anyway, I just continue to layer and, until I get sort of the color that I'm really going for in this. Another nice thing about Poscas, instead of, well, for one thing, you can see I have this white one that I'm using. So if you go too dark, which happens, instead of feeling like, you know, sort of a lost cause, unlike watercolor, where you lay something down and it is very much permanent and it's really hard to lighten. With Posca pens, you can go over, you know, so long as the bottom layer is dry, you can lay white over that and then lighten it up again if you've gone too far. So yeah, that is so I just keep on going. I show you guys something. End result. Oh, let's say clean, limited detail. So, you know, this is the finished. So you can just see the detail. Like basically what I love, you know, and this is something that I do in my oil paint. I love something in a term that's sometimes referred to as optical mixing. And so what that means is that your brain like does sort of finishes the job in terms of it's the kind of painting in which you get up close and it looks really abstract, a bunch of lines, and you look at it from far away, and it all comes together. Basically, all, you know, those little marks start merging as form. And so I paint. This is the way I paint. I like I think of it as like breaking down a field into all its little bits of constituent colors, and then coming together, it works. And so that's essentially though this is drawing and doing it a little differently, that's something that that I'm trying to achieve. I'll grab the, let's see, and where is it? Details now.
And I just was noticing some questions in the chat.
Oh, sorry, I'm totally ignoring the chat.
No, I just wanted to ask them before I forgot.
Yeah.
Is how do I reduce crinkling on watercolor artworks?
Oh my gosh. Okay, let me get this out here so I can actually see this. All right. How do I reduce crinkle? Oh gosh. Unfortunately, I'm not the best resource on that because I'm actually, like, I don't really do watercolor. I know from fellow painter friends that crinkling is tough. It happens, and so for the most part, I would say making sure that you're using heavier paper, as heavy as you can, is probably like that would help. But as not a watercolorist, I can answer many questions on oil paint and pencils and such, but I can't really give you a good answer to that. I'm sorry.
And then one more question that I noticed was, how do you control your dark tones so you don't overuse the dark and then everything becomes muddy?
So I would say, well, in general, this question applies to whatever medium you're using. In general, like in terms of oil paint, I really always encourage people to try to keep their colors clean. Meaning keeping them discreet in terms of whether you're using acrylic paint or oil paint, and not getting too much solvent or thinner within your piles of paint. Now in this medium, so long as you let it dry, which happens in, you know, a number of seconds. Well, it actually depends on the color you're using, because some are thinner than others naturally. I would, you know, basically just leave that area, move on to something else, and in a minute or so, minute and a half, that area will become dry enough that you can go over it. So, and I've done that. Like I've realized, I added way too much dark and I need to lighten stuff up. And so, it's very possible, which is what is really neat about this particular medium. Like I said, they're really forgiving. So if you feel like you did get too muddy, you can kind of sort of redo that. I'll pull up the other. I thought I had another detailed one. New drawing. Huh. Oh, I know where I put it. That's right. It's somewhere else. Okay, so this is again the final one, and you know, you can see, it's fun to reduce it down to the little, and then sort of then pull it out and see, you know, how many little marks are in there, which are a hell of a lot. You know, another thing is like in this world of looking at so much art, well, not only online, but on social media and on our phones, that's all we see. You know, all we see are these tiny little images of artwork, and it's amazing. Like, it's amazing that you can just sit there and scroll on your, you know, Instagram feed or whatever, and just, I mean, that's what I like. That's predominantly my feed, is just seeing phenomenal art by artists from all over the world. But you're seeing something so small, and so. And it's, you know, maybe you read the caption and maybe you read that it's actually like a 4-foot painting, but you see what you see. And so it's pretty interesting when you see something so small to, you know, and then you actually see what the real thing and realize, oh my gosh, there's like so many brush strokes, or there's so many marks that I couldn't see. And I always encourage, you guys are all artists, I always encourage people to I mean, sadly, we can't in a pandemic right now, but generally speaking, like, go out and look at art. And, you know, particularly because we have so much at our fingertips, which is amazing that we have that, but at the same time, we're not really seeing it. Like, we're not seeing texture, you know, you're not seeing size, and it's so good for, like, it's like every time, even though I look at art like multiple times a day, every day on, you know, online. When I go to a gallery or a museum and actually see work like up close, it's so inspiring. Like, I always, I just go home and with something that I think about, you know, in a way that it just doesn't happen on the screen, you know? So, looking forward to a time in the not so distant future that we could get back to that. That would be great. Yeah. Is any other chats that I missed? Let's say. Yeah, I think I might have gotten. Oh, I see somebody's comment. Posca pens work well on photo paper. That's cool. Wow, that's probably. And then you have that sheen to it too. I suppose. And yeah. Yeah, so still adding more on Renee here. Oops, I lost my image of her. Got way too many things. Got a big screen here. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna block that. So let me close that one. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so my goal, you know, whenever I'm, well, you know, in this particular little exercise, or really drawing or painting anybody, and really going for a likeness, I'm trying, you know, I just keep on looking, I squint my eyes and reduce the amount of information I see, which is a pretty tried and true technique for realist artists. Like, so, you know, and it's sort of it's counterintuitive in that it sounds ridiculous to say, well, squint your eyes and reduce the amount of information you can see so that you can paint or draw more realistically. But what's going on is that we have, you know, there's so much, like, in looking at this image of Renee, I can zoom in here on her. Let's see. Oops. Stop that. There we go. If I were to, like, you know, really zoom in and look at all this detail, I lose sight of the bigger picture, right? Suddenly her eye suddenly I'm not really even seeing that shadow anymore. Shadows are starting to look lighter to me. And you kind of lose a sense of the, you know, the solidity of the form when when you start staring wide-eyed and taking in too much information, or kind of zooming in. And so when I'm talking to students about let's just say when it is important to really try to make, it's not always important to people to make your drawing or your work look like what it actually. I'm just realizing, Grace, I'm probably going over time now. I just looked at the clock, so just let me know if it's like, give me a warning, like, all right, we got a few minutes or not, whatever. I was saying, oh yeah. So, when it is important, like when you're doing a commission, which I do from time to time, and it's funny because people will say to me, oh, I really like your style, and I want to, let's say like somebody is asking me to paint a picture of their daughter, their husband, or whatever. I like your style, so I want it to be expressive and color. Now, whenever anybody says that, it's not that they're not sincere, but the bottom line is that you got to paint, when you are doing a commission, a certain kind of commission, people want their paintings to look like them. And so, so when I'm working on something, I'm like really, I just keep on looking for all the little subtle, trying to make sure this cheek the curvature is sort of wide enough. Where does the corner of her mouth lie in relation to her eye? There's all kinds of little tricks, or not so much, I guess tricks is just tools when we do portraits, that, there's something that I talk about with my students called a likeness triangle. That is, everybody, we all uniquely have a distance from eye to middle of the mouth. I mean, you can measure it in a couple of different ways, but that distance is unique for everybody. So sometimes you're drawing somebody and you're like, it might look okay, but it like doesn't quite look like them, and it's annoying, and you're like, what is wrong with this drawing, and why doesn't it look like them? A real helpful tool is to look at that relationship, because if something is off, if this is a little too far over there, then it'll look like a woman or maybe her sister, but it won't necessarily look like her, who you're drawing or painting. So so that's something that talk about a lot in doing this kind of thing. And I probably should wrap it up in a couple moments. So I will show you, let's see, Renee final. There we go. So this is pretty much how it ended up. And, when I was saying that I had wished that I had a dark brown, because I probably would have used it more than the purple, but the purple is pretty fun anyway. But again, it was most important to me for, to get the darks, to really work at getting, creating marks, and I'll move in again, that read as dark and light. And the more you layer, like creating these combinations of color that read as a particular, like yet another color, and a dark color versus a light color. So that's pretty much where we ended up there. And I'm not guessing, Grace, I think we're probably ready to wrap it up, because I don't want to take too much time that I shouldn't.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Jennifer, put them in the chat. This is so cool to see sort of your process and where it ends up. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Oh, my pleasure. No, this is it's fun. I love talking to students of art or other artists, and getting to share and share ideas and such. So this is great.